when many of the Founding Fathers realized that the Articles of Confederation were so weak, they realized that they needed to amend them. Now, there was no way, no process within the Articles of Confederation to amend them. However, they decided to call a constitutional convention. And so Alexander Hamilton calls a constitutional convention in Philadelphia in 1787 to amend the Articles of Confederation. This is just men who have been in the Continental Congress, who have been at the forefront of leadership for the past 10 to 15 years, but they don't have any actual legal right to do so, but they do so anyway. And the first thing that the Constitutional Convention does in 1787 is they elect George Washington president of the convention, and then he later becomes the president of the United States. It becomes the executive branch of the Constitution. Now, to amend the Articles of Confederation, you need to have 9 states amend, but you need 13 states to be able to scrap the Articles of Confederation and start over. Rhode Island doesn't want to change the Articles, right? They're a small state, and they think the Articles of Confederation are just great. Remember, the Articles of Confederation are really good for small states. So there are only 12 states represented in the Constitutional Convention, which makes it illegal. Now, there are in general some people who are anti-federalists and people who are federalists, and the anti-federalist comes up first. That term comes up before federalist comes up, and they believe that the Articles of Confederation are pretty good, that you only need small changes to the Constitution to make it a little bit stronger, right? You just have to add a little bit of power to the executive, and then it will be fine, right? And so they propose the New Jersey Plan. They propose the New Jersey Plan. And the New Jersey Plan is proposed by William Paterson of New Jersey, and it says, let's have a committee, that's the executive, and let's have two Congress and legislature, right? Each of them represented by one state. So we'll have 2 bodies of Congress. Each of them will have 1 state, 1 vote, right? It's basically the same as the Articles, with just the added power to tax and regulate commerce. So the New Jersey Plan is supported by a lot of what we would later call anti-federalists. But most people at the convention are what we call federalists, right? They believe that the federal government needs to get laws. They don't want everyone to have an equal voice. They only want free white men with property to vote. They only want to give the vote to people who are sort of the natural aristocracy. And they see the states as way too democratic, right? And they fear the sort of democracy run amok will turn into anarchy, right? And people will end up with too much power. They prefer the Virginia Plan. Now, the Virginia Plan, proposed by James Madison, is a very powerful national government. It creates a real executive, right? That's a president that's elected to 4 years, that's sort of unlimited terms. There is a bicameral legislature that's voted on indirectly through an electoral college, the same way we vote for a president. There'd be 2 houses, a Senate, House of Senate, and a House of Representatives, both represented by tax, right? So if you had a lot of money, you would have maybe just 1 representative. If you had almost no money, maybe you and 100 other people with no money would be represented by a person, right? So if you have more money, you have more representation in Congress. And that makes a federal power, a very strong federal government with a lot of power to tax, that the government can veto any state law, and it makes the federal government the strongest land. And this makes the small states very upset. So there's clearly a need for a compromise. The compromise is proposed by Roger Sherman of Connecticut. So Connecticut played a big part in creating the Constitution, and the compromise is what is the basis of our Constitution today. And it is a sort of combination of the two plans. There's an executive, that's a president with 4-year term, and at that time, unlimited terms. There's a legislative that's bicameral. Now, one of the houses would be by population, right? How many people determines how many representatives are in that house. The other one is by the state, so each state gets 2 votes, right? So the Congress really is supposed to represent the people. And the federal government is potentially strong. It's not necessarily strong, but it can be strong. Now, government can't veto state law, And they also make a list of things that the states can't do, right? So there's a sort of like the federal government has this responsibility and the state has these responsibilities, and they don't mix. Now, to satisfy the South and their slave system, slaves are not citizens, right? So if you don't count slaves in determining how many representatives you get in Congress, you would get very few seats, right? But if you decide to give the slaves, those states, representatives that reflect the whole population, then it seems to suggest that slaves are some way represented by Congress, right? So this is a dilemma that they struggle with, and they decide in the end to do something called the 3/5 clause, right? They decide to count slaves as 3/5 the person, and this is so that it's clear that slaves are not citizens and they're not represented, but the South does get a few more seats in Congress.